Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. In this video I'd like to give you guys an update on my sunflowers here. As you can see, they're looking really good at the moment. It's now late August. We've got a small heat wave today, so they've opened up quite nicely. As you can see, they've grown quite a lot. I have just measured the tallest one, which is this one here, and it's come out at 2.80 meters, so that's just a tiny bit over 9 foot tall. So they've definitely grown taller than last year. And there's two over here as well, which might just top that one slightly. You can see this one's fully open and flowering, so that means it's not going to grow any taller. Whereas this one over here, there's two here which are still yet to open, so they're going to put on a few more inches. So there's a chance they could get a little bit taller. At the moment they're just a tiny bit shorter than the tallest one, but there's not too much in it. So they've done fairly well. And they were a bit dry at the beginning of the year. The problem is these are right next to a house. The rain doesn't really get into the soil very well from where they are. The house overhang seems to stop a lot of the soil, stop a lot of the rain getting in. So you can see it is very dry under there. I've not actually weeded that at all. You can see none of the weeds have actually grown up. It stayed really dry for most of the summer. But we actually had a very wet, warm summer, and so even though it's been very dry in the soil, there's been just enough rain to keep them moist. Normally, if these were in the garden, they would have had more than enough rain. They wouldn't have had any drought problems, but they've had a small bit of drought problems, and that did stunt them a bit at the beginning of the year when the ground was a bit dry. But with all the rain we've had recently, they've really come on quite nicely. You can see today there is a little bit of drought stress in some of them. So you can see here the leaves are kind of a little bit limp, and they're hanging down, so they're still a bit stressed by the lack of water. So they could have probably got even higher. I reckon if there was no drought stress whatsoever, we could have put probably another 2 or 3 foot on top of these, and they could be getting close to the bottom of those windows there. But they've done pretty well. I'm happy with how tall they've grown. Also, I planted them quite close together to get a really good display of lots of sunflowers. I wasn't going for the biggest. If I was to go for the tallest sunflowers, then I would have had just like maybe about 3 or 4 plants with plenty of space for their roots, and that would have grown them even taller. So all these sunflowers were sown from seeds which were collected last year. Those sunflowers were a mixture of different sunflowers, so all the different varieties crossbred, and these are the offspring of them. So these aren't the same as the original parents, but there's some similarities which have come about. So a couple of the parents were Giraffe, Titan, which were 2 really large varieties. There was also Kong, which is a branching variety, which is also very big. And there was also some smaller branching red ones as well. The genetics for the red ones didn't come through much. There was a couple. They've actually died off now. And it was, you can see, I think this one might be one here. You can see some of the red genetics have come through and given it kind of an orangey haze around the center of the flower. There's several of these, probably about 3 or 4. They've all grown a lot smaller. They've all branched a small amount, but they were the first ones to flower as well. They flowered back in July. This might be one as well, I'm not sure, I'll have to wait until that comes up. But generally with the ones that have the red flowers, they tend to have slightly darker veins. So this one looks like it doesn't have any other red genetics in it. The other ones that have come through are the ones which are just kind of single-headed. So it's quite a bit of variation because the genetics are, as I say, all different family members are mixed together. But what seems to be is a few one-headed ones. So you can see like this one here, tall, single-headed. It's got a few side shoots, but they're not very strong and they're not going to come too much. Same with this one here and this one over here. And then the really big ones, they actually do seem to be multi-branch. You can see there's a few side branches on that one. These ones over here, it looks like that one on the left is a single stem. The one on the right will be multi-branch. You can see a few side branches are starting at the top there. And then in between, we've got some other ones which have got a lot of branching genetics, and they're like the ones like this one here. And these haven't been growing as tall, but they've been branching really well. So you can see there's a big head there, absolutely covered in sunflower seeds, but there's lots of new shoots coming up. This one here as well, you can see it died off. I cut off the stem there. It's got all these side branches, and even these side branches up here, they're now starting to get their own side branches. So they've got good branching genetics. So what I'll probably do is I'll save the seeds from the tallest plants and also the ones that are branching really nicely. So you can see this one here, this one's particularly good. It's a very tall plant, but it also has lots of side branches coming off. And I'd like to try and keep more of the side branching genetics because that really prolongs the flowering of the plants. Once the first flowers finish, they send out lots of side shoots, and they'll keep flowering for a long time. What we'll do is the ones that have good side branching, I will cut off the main stems, and that will encourage a lot more side branches. The ones such as this one, which have a really big head and just 1 or 2 side shoots, I will leave these to set seeds so I can get the seeds from this, because these small flowers aren't going to yield much. But these other plants that are sending up loads of side shoots, I'll keep deadheading them to encourage more side shoots to come up and more flowers. As I say, they have done really well this year. The same, I still can't keep on top of the watering because I don't stay at this property, but they've still done well even with a bit of drought stress. And it's interesting to see the different varieties that have come through. They have mostly been looking pretty similar. As I say, there's a smaller variety which has a slight orangey tinge to it, which must have picked up some of the red genetics. They've also been really popular with the bumblebees. You can see there's quite a few around here at the moment. There's not as many today as there was previously, but there's still quite a few bumblebees around. And when it comes to the petal size on most of them is pretty good. There does seem to be some slight variances, but nothing massive. So you can see most of them do have lots of large petals. Some like this one may be slightly better than others, but they are mostly good petal sizes. So as I say, it's the end of August now, so the weather's starting to cool down. Here in Scotland, we're so far north that the weather, when it comes to August, really does start to tail off. You get some colder conditions. As soon as September comes, you can have frost. I'm hoping, because this summer's been so warm and humid, that the frost is going to be delayed a bit this autumn. We'll just have to wait and see. And these are right next to a south-facing wall, so there's quite a bit of heat coming off the wall, so that should protect them, hopefully. So if the frost stays off and I keep deadheading these, we should be able to get flowers right through the September, maybe into the beginning of October. And if we do, I'll give you guys an update on that. Hopefully we'll have some more coming through. There was some younger ones that are allowed to grow, but they've not really come to anything, I think, because these have been sucking out so much nutrients and so much water, it's kind of starved off the younger ones. So there was a couple down here, you can see them here, there's that one there and that one there, and they've just not really grown. It's been too shady probably as well, and no moisture. But what might happen is, as these start to die off, the larger ones, we might start to see some more growth from the small ones. So it'll be interesting to see if they come up. And you can see some of the other plants that I have in the border here, they've really struggled. You can see the drought stress there. Even though we've had a lot of rain this summer, the sunflowers are just so thirsty, they're taking all the moisture out, and they're next to the house, so there's not a lot of water. Now when it comes to the Californian poppies, these did actually flower really well. I'll show you some photos now, show you how they did. I had to cut them back hard just so I could get in and cut the grass, because they were coming over the front. What I might do if I was to do this again, instead of sowing them at the front, I'd probably sow them at the back, because to be honest, there's still quite a lot of sun coming in, and these are quite drought tolerant, so they should be okay with the dry soil conditions. So I'd probably put them at the back, and because there's so few leaves at the bottom of these plants, they will still flower quite well. That would stop them coming right over onto the grass and causing sorts of pollen would cutting the lawn. So the only other issues I've had this year is wind. We've had a couple of windy bouts of weather, nothing as bad as last year fortunately, and I was able to save most of these sunflowers from any really bad winds. But as you can see, I've got loads and loads of bamboo canes. So first of all, I had these bamboo canes holding them up quite thin. They did well until the sunflowers were about 6 foot tall. Then we had some strong winds, and they started to really start to lean over. So I had to put in some much stronger bamboo canes. Fortunately, I had some 3-meter bamboo canes. So these ones here, they're about 10 foot tall. And these 3-meter bamboo canes I cut into smaller pieces and actually hammered them into the ground with a hammer. And these are much stronger, and they're holding up quite nicely. So lots of bamboo canes have certainly helped. If it wasn't for them, they probably would have fallen over. The problem is, these are on a south-facing wall, so they tend to grow towards the sun and away from the wall. And then once they get over the midway point, just gravity does the rest and they start falling over, especially when they get the really big heavy heads, and if there's any wind as well, they'll quickly go. So I think that's all for this update. I'll leave you with some photos of how they've been doing, and as I say, I'll hopefully give you an update again in the autumn if these do continue into the September and into October.